There have been many iterations of Bram Stoker's Dracula novel since its original publication in 1897. Whether it was a stage play, a black and white film, a TV movie, or a big budget Hollywood production, the Dracula story has managed to creep its way through the generations. It is estimated that there are over 200 films that feature the Dracula character. Although there are many stories involving the Dracula character even to this day, the last mainstream Hollywood film based on Bram Stoker's novel was back in 1992. This adaptation, titled simply Bram Stoker's Dracula, was produced by Columbia Pictures and directed by Francis Ford Coppola. This edition of Dracula is one of the most famous films based on the character and of the novel itself. Coppola, surprisingly enough, is a horror fan, and Dracula in particular is one of his favorites. When he worked as a camp counselor, he would often read Bram Stoker's novel to the youngsters in his cabin. His love for Stoker's book transcends through the film by sticking closer to the source material than many of his predecessors. Unlike most versions, Coppola's film included the characters Arthur Holmwood and Quincy Morris, as well as the climactic race back to Transylvania. Though the film is somewhat true to the novel, it does incorporate many elements that were not found in Stoker's original tale. While creating his adaptation of this ghoulish story, Coppola followed the philosophy, steal from the best. As such, Bram Stoker's Dracula incorporates many innovations and deviations from previous iterations. One crucial plot point that is not found in Stoker's novel has to do with Dracula's passionate side. The 1974 Dracula film directed by Dan Curtis was the first to overly romanticize the Count. In both the Curtis and Coppola version, it is suggested that the Mina character is a reincarnation of Dracula's lover, which was not present in the novel. Another inclusion that was taken from the Dan Curtis film is the merging of the Dracula character with the historical figure Vlad Tepes. In the Stoker novel, Tepes' nickname Dracula provided the name for the vampire, but probably very little else. Although Stoker knew very little about this famous war hero when he was writing his novel, some still believe that Tepes was the inspiration for the novel and the character. However, Stoker was already writing his novel before he came across any references to Tepes. Despite this, both film versions actually depict Count Dracula and Tepes as the same person, which is untrue. Influences from other films can be seen in Coppola's version of Dracula as well. It borrows from the 1979 film with Frank Langella by having a sympathetic interpretation of Dracula. In preparation for his role as the Count in Coppola's film, actor Gary Oldman wanted to expose his character as a poor, tortured soul. Oldman's goal was to portray a Dracula that wasn't completely evil, but rather a fallen angel. Coppola allowed his actors to experiment and even took a lot of their ideas into account in the process of making the film. Pre-production for Bram Stoker's Dracula began in the summer of 1991 at Sony Studios in Culver, California. This was shortly after the completion of Coppola's film The Godfather Part 3. At the time, he was struggling financially and was attempting to save his life at a time when it was extremely rocky. He was also facing the challenge of adapting a story that has been done to death, literally. Coppola decided he wanted his version to have more emotional intensity because he didn't want to just tell the same story over again. Once he had his cast, Coppola decided to have them read the entire novel aloud together so they could really absorb the story. From there, the cast continued to have rehearsal for 4 weeks. Coppola wanted to provide his actors with a memorable experience and have them bond together. He had them dance, play games, and eat together in order to instill fond memories of each other. During this time, he also sent out the cast to do various tasks in order to envision their characters better. Keanu Reeves was sent horseback riding, and some cast members got to ride in hot air balloons. Gary Oldman, however, begged the question how he was supposed to get into character since Dracula is 300 years old and dead. Coppola responded to this by sending a coffin to Oldman's house, which he kept in his garage. The shooting of the film can be described as crazy, yet creative. Although many of Coppola's plans had to change, he tried to stick very close to the original storyboards. As with any film, there were instances on the set of Bram Stoker's Dracula that didn't go according to plan. These problems include, but aren't limited to, falling behind schedule, difficult child actors, and behind-the-scenes politics. There were even confrontations between Coppola and his main cast that led to aspects of his original vision being compromised. One scene in particular is when Dracula takes the form of an enlarged bat and frightens the vampire hunters. This was done because Gary Oldman didn't feel the hunters would be scared of him if he was in his human form. This was an example of how compromise led to creativity, because it resulted in a new form of Dracula that wasn't originally intended. Due to the nature of the story, Dracula required many special effects. Coppola, rather than relying on post-production, wanted to create all the effects in camera. This led to Coppola firing the special effects team and hiring his son Roman to handle the practical effects. One notable special effect Roman created was Dracula's eyes, ominously floating in the sky while Jonathan Harker is on his journey to Transylvania. This was done by actually compositing the different shots together and wounding them by hand. This is a technique that German expressionist filmmakers like F.W. Murnau would have done. When the film was finally completed, it received mixed reviews. Roger Ebert gave the film 3 out of 4 stars, and its Metacritic score sits at a solid 57%. Although it has some eerie moments, it is quite bizarre and includes some unintentionally funny moments. One highly regarded aspect of the film is its performances. These include Gary Oldman in the title role, Anthony Hopkins as an eccentric Van Helsing, and Tom Waits as Renfield. Another one of its redeemable qualities is the camera work and direction. The film itself has been called a visual work of art, and almost every frame is worthy of being hung on a wall. However, this did lead to the issue of style over substance. Some feel that the film's narrative structure is weak and sometimes feels disjointed. It has been described as a series of vignettes that explode with drama, but this is similar to how the original book was told by using different journal entries and letters that come together to make one narrative. Another aspect of the film that has been critiqued is the performances of the romantic leads, Jonathan Harker and Mina. The Keanu Reeves performance as Jonathan in particular has been described as stilted. When asked about the issue, Coppola explained that it was rough for Reeves to successfully pull off an English accent. Coppola tried to get him to relax and wasn't as critical of him, due to how much he personally admired the young actor. Another aspect of the film that is heavily criticized is one of Dracula's forms. In the film, Dracula appears as many different forms, such as a bat, a wolf, or a young adult. None of these, however, are as infamous as when Dracula is exposed as an old man. Every Dracula film has an iconic image of its title character that sticks in your memory. In Nosferatu, it's the shadow walking up the stairs. The 1931 film has Lugosi's staring eyes. And the Hammer films have Christopher Lee's bloody fangs. In Coppola's film, Dracula has a giant beehive hairdo and a long red cape. This blunder seems to ruin a portion of the film for some people. Through its delights and drawbacks, Bram Stoker's Dracula ultimately goes down in history as another missed opportunity. It is a great visionary horror epic, but it can never be as important to the genre as the Lugosi film, which is a timeless classic. However, no perfect Dracula film exists. Every Dracula film has its strengths and weaknesses. Although the 1931 version with Bela Lugosi is regarded as a classic, the second half of the film is stilted and feels too much like a stage play. In the Hammer film, Dracula Prince of Darkness, Christopher Lee hated his dialogue and refused to speak it, leaving us with a silent count. The Dan Curtis film from 1974 was originally intended to be 3 hours, until CBS stepped in and had them rework the script until it was significantly shorter. The list could go on forever. In the end, Bram Stoker's Dracula may not be as important as some of the classic Dracula films, but it has its place in horror history. It is responsible for telling the Dracula story to a new generation, and its success also led to a remake of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Francis Ford Coppola managed to give us a version of Dracula that not only stays close to the book, but also pays homage to the films that inspired him. Maybe in the next few decades, a new generation of filmmakers will take inspiration from Coppola's film and will have a new Dracula story to keep the legacy alive. Will there ever be a definitive version of Dracula? Only time will tell, but for now, Coppola's version may be the closest we'll ever get to seeing a faithful film version of Bram Stoker's novel. So what you just saw was an actual research paper that I wrote in college about Bram Stoker's Dracula. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you think. I took a whole class about vampires and it was one of the most fun classes that I ever took. It was taught by Mark Dawidziak, and if you're a longtime fan of the channel, you know who he is by now. And yeah, it was really, really fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you tune in for more episodes of the House of Horror in the future. Make sure you subscribe, share this video, give it a like, all that good stuff. And that is about it, you guys. Take care and stay spooky.